Day 69. Do you like the 69 position? We have reached no tittering in the cheap seats. Welcome to This Much Is True. We're still hanging in there by our fingernails to get the 90 days or something when we decide whether we're going to stick with this or not. In Ireland, we're still in the we're in the wake of a government overturning here. Not quite, but still. The government got their arse collectively handed to them by the people when they decided to have a needless referendum where they tried to relegate women and motherhood to the dark days of the past. They wanted to replace it with something that was far more upbeat and current and progressive. Let's use that fucking word that they like to rely on. Why is that? Because they want to be the best boy in the class to the EU. They were up reporting to, I don't know, some other powers, but certainly not the people who put them resoundingly in their place. And rightly, forgive my language, fucking so, I was happy to be among the monstrous ranks that voted no to them tampering with what was already good. If it ain't fucking broke, do not fix it, you little bastards. Yes. Why am I behaving like that? Because it was a good day for Ireland, right? We are so into being the progressive ones. It was getting kind of boring, specifically when it wasn't making sense. That said, I think I shall retire. Oh, it's a little bit of glass I have here. I am going to retire from the whole interest in politics thing, which I never really had. I was forced into it. Why? Because there are sheer little C words running this country that were never elected in the first place. I detest, I fucking loathe the little girly men that claim to represent the people in this country, that are so progressive that they become regressive and ultimately degenerate. They got their arses handed to them this weekend, and I am delighted for it. It's going to be a long battle to pull these fuckers out of power, but I believe that it is the beginning of the end for these little girly men who claim to be of the people, and largely you can tell by their little voices how they talk that they're never gonna be one of the goddamn people. These are the people who wanted to take the words women and motherhood out of our hard-won constitution. These little bastards who, when you open your mouth to say anything to the contrary, they brand you as right-wing. And the little fuckers who doesn't even realise that in this country, you know, and I'm going to rein in my rant very shortly, do not worry, the closest thing that this country ever got to being far right was in the goddamn days of the 1930s when their grandfathers put on blue shirts and wore jack boots and, yes, even gave the Heil salute. But they don't want to think about that, do they? Oh, no. Anybody who speaks, out about their country being suddenly taken from under them is a right-wing, far-right fascist. They don't want to, no, these little people don't want to visit the past. They are too busy imposing the likes of pornography on our 4 to 10 years old. Look. Do you ever hear of the law of elasticity? You pull something so far and it'll snap back in your fucking face. Well done, the Irish electorate. Well done. I just hope you will continue on the good work. I'm pulling out of the whole thing because even though I have no interest in politics, I couldn't help but be interested because I've never known such a loathsome group of fricking, filthy dozen that run this country. But I also am mature enough to realise that my detestation, my loathing of these particular girly men types colours my objectivity, so that even were they speaking something of worth, I don't think I could even agree with it. Such as my such as my loathing for them. I don't want to use the word hatred. I cannot stand what they're doing to this country. Anybody who waves their flag is suddenly a fascist. Fuck off, you little fucking rainbow-coloured C words. I'm tired and a bit emotional, but on tonight's show, I want to tell you how Noel Edmonds, of all people, can really help you. Also, I will visit, or should I say revisit, some mad times in the USA, culminating in Van Morrison's daughter. How does that all work? I don't know. Stick around for episode 1969. It's not 1969, episode 69 of This Much Is True. So, in 2006, Noel Edmonds' career had been on the wane, but suddenly he got lucky again and reinvented himself with Deal or No Deal. He also wrote what we used to call a catch penny, in other words, something that you just thought might make a bit of money based on your celebrity, of a book called Cosmic Ordering. Now, I was amazed for the €6 or whatever I laid out for this book, how actually good it was. And one exercise that he had, I believe, will be of benefit to you, ladies and gentlemen, especially those of you who are human. What do I mean by that? By being human is we are fallible. We all make mistakes. And perhaps as a man or a woman, you have done something, engaged in something, thought about something that shames you, that you're guilty about. And as we know, guilty and worry are two. Guilt and worry are useless emotions. But anyway, let's say you did something. I don't know what it was. Only you do. Perhaps you thought something about somebody. Perhaps you had thoughts about somebody. Maybe you stole something. Maybe you were an out-and-out drunk. Perhaps you had an affair. Or maybe you did a bit of white-collar stuff. Or indeed you sniffed some white stuff. And you're okay now. You've been okay for years. But in the wee small hours of the morning, or the times when your conscience will resurface and say, hey, you're not such a great person. Remember X, Y, or Z, or as our American cousins would say, Z. See, I watched Sesame Street as well back in the 70s. So troublesome with a capital T is what happens, because perhaps you were that soldier who did that heinous crime, or you were that cheating spouse, or you were that thief. I don't know what it is. There is a myriad of sins that people can commit. But if they've got a conscience, that is where we will start. And to do this exercise, there is only one qualification, and that is that you are truly remorseful. You are sorry for what you did, and if you could undo it, you'd undo it in a heartbeat. That's all. That's the only qualification you require. Are you on board? Only you know what it is that's troublesome to you. Only you know what's troublesome to you. But let us together, with the help of Noel Edmonds, Mr. Blobby, banish that forever. And here's how you go about doing it. We understand that you're sorry, you're truly remorseful, and that you'd undo it if you could. We know that. I'm not making light of it. So here's what you do. You wait until you have time alone in the house or wherever. But you cannot be disturbed here. No mobile phones, no chance of anybody walking in on you. And making sure that there's a fire extinguisher on hand. All will be revealed. Here's what you do. You write that down, whatever it is, and you be terrific. And in order to be terrific, you got to be specific. You write down exactly what happened, your part in it, whatever, or what the sin is, if you like. What the sin is. Now, if you're a Catholic, you could say, well, I could just go to confession. Well, maybe so. But some things are probably just too shameful for the confessional. And after all, as we've all seen, aren't the clergy only human themselves? So you don't want to be sharing that kind of stuff with them. And that's if you're a Catholic. No, 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 no. This is for you and the four walls and a piece of paper and a pen. Write down whatever it is. We're not going to make light of it. Write it down. Okay? Have an envelope or an envelope, whatever your pronunciation, and you put it in there. You seal it up, and you go to your hob or a candle, and as I said, with the fire extinguisher on standby, you burn that motherfucker. You take it, you sandblast it off your mind. Let it go. Let it go. The past is a bucket of ashes, and what do you do with those? You chuck them out. So you're at peace with yourself, and you are just going to obliterate this thing that bothers you. Why? Because you're truly sorry, and there's only so many amount of times you can say how sorry you are. And if you undertake that exercise, it'll be cathartic for you. Draw a line under it. Life is too short, and I wish you well. Now, let's talk about mad times in America. And I've been to America many, many, many times. The second time I went to America was with my beloved of the last 29 years. Yeah, wow, time is flying. We were kids. We were like 30 and 31 years of age. And we were engaged within not far off of a month or 6 weeks of meeting. Well, I was driving along one day with her in the car, and I said, I won't say her name because she doesn't like limelights or any attention drawn to herself. I said, I fancy going to America. I fancy going to LA. She said, what? I said, yeah. And at the time, we were dinkies, dual income, no kids. And we were in love. And I said, yeah, I fancy going to America. And she says, I'm on for that. And I had a contact on Newport Beach, of all places. I'm trying to think, there's another area as well, Laguna Beach. And my young friend was called Ed. Little Eddie, I used to call him. He was a few years younger than me, and I liked him. I was his manager at one point. And Eddie had moved over and was beginning to live the American dream. And he had invited me over, and I said, Eddie, I'm on for that. You just get the place. I'm going to bring my fiancée over. So it was all arranged. Newport Beach, by the way, is where they used to film Baywatch. Oh, yes. But with the spontaneity of youth, man, I was so naive. We took a Virgin flight over. And we did that, whatever it is, that mad 12-hour journey. And rather than shack up in a hotel immediately after the flight, oh no, Muggins had a car hired. Now, there was something wrong with that. Number one, I'd never driven in the States before. Number two, I'd never driven an automatic. And number three, for somebody who's left-handed and cack-handed at the best of times, I was driving on a different side of the road. Oh yes, dyslexia. dyslexia head. Here I was. And my wife-to-be knew no more and trusted that this idiot would know what he was doing. So number one, I'm jet-lagged. And number two, I'm faced with all these I've just mentioned, these conditions. Do not ask me how I did it. I haven't a clue. It's a wonder I wasn't the cause of a pile-up on highway whatever. But we eventually made it down the coast. From LAX. I don't know how I did it. I have no idea. But we did. And we ended up in Newport Beach with Eddie and one of his many partners. Eddie, as I said, was living the American dream, and he was one horny little bastard as well. So he was putting it about in a big way. And the lady he was with and her friends said, "Come on in. Here's the apartment. By the way, leave the key in the door." Leave the key in the door? Yeah. Quite a lot of people in that neck of the woods had even retired at the age of 30. There was wealth around, affluence. It was something else. We had a bloody good time. Yeah, we did. And crazily, I drove up the coast, up the 101 to San Francisco. I was going to include a picture of that, but I'm too tired tonight. Me with long hair, kinda. And hair that's not resembling the colour it is now. Me and my good lady, living the American dream. And just before I got into San Francisco, I nearly caused a car crash. Yeah, it was me. It was my fault. Madness. Absolute madness. Oh yeah. We think we're so invincible when we're young. But I'd say they had to change the seat covers of that rental car after I handed it in, because we had many a close shave. Also, merging on the highways is not for the faint-hearted. In fact, I remember giving up on merging and trying to U-turn back up. You gotta merge. I mean, the cars are going so fast. That said, I think the speed limit was 55 miles an hour, but they go. They don't take any prisoners. There's so many cars on the freeway. Madness. Yeah. And one night Eddie said, "Why don't you come out? One of the chicks I'm dating is Van Morrison's daughter." Who's Van Morrison? Well, he began life out in Northern Ireland, but then became more American than the Americans themselves. And I have to say, if you do listen to a show called Desert Island Discs, this is when they take artists of old or contemporary and they say, if you were on a desert island, what would be your top 8 songs? And people name them. And always, pretty much, and I've listened to it for years, 2 artists always come up in people's fondness. Bob Dylan and Van Morrison. Yeah, more so than the Beatles or Elvis. You will always hear people say, "Oh, Van Morrison," or the other fella, Bob Dylan. And we met Bob Dylan's daughter, Shanna. Lovely, beautiful young lady. You would happily take her hand and run off into the sunset. But Eddie was knocking about. But Shanna, yes, she was beautiful. And in her own right, she was a songstress. She was a singer. And she was telling us about the album she had coming out. And she was beautiful, unaffected totally by her father's fame. Not a spoiled brat. Just a beautiful young American, to quote David Bowie. And a few years back, well, I suppose it's 10 years ago now, we went to a Van Morrison concert here in Dublin. And who opened for him? But Shanna. So now, there you go. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you to all the folks, all 5 of you or whatever that listen. You all know who you are. Hello, especially to Susan in Yorkshire, who says she likes the honesty. Well, Susan, an old friend of mine said to me years ago, "Marco," this is the way he used to talk, "the truth is shamed. but never blamed. And yeah, I would like to say that I would like to strive at all times for the truth and for honesty. Honesty is such a lonely word, but mostly what I need from you. Who sang that? Billy Joel. Not Joel, as some disc jockeys like to say. Billy Joel. Honesty. Yeah. Well. Yes, Susan, for all my frailties, for all my overweightness, for all my cardiac illnesses, for all my years, more years than I care to remember, and my mild trips into glasses of wine, at least I would like to think I'm honest. So thank you for saying that. It is true, this much, as I always like to say to you. That's my fire going in the background. Can you hear my artificial fire? Won't you take care of yourselves? Because I'm going to sleep tonight. I'm telling you guys, I am going to go out like a freaking log. Captain's log. Over and out. Take care of yourself, Mayor. God go with you. Take care, because I care.